Welcome to video 3.1, congruence. Okay, so here's our first definition for congruent figures. If figures are congruent, then all pairs of corresponding parts are congruent, sides, angles, etc. Okay, so we got a few examples here. So let's suppose we know that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. Well, by definition, we know all pairs of corresponding sides are congruent, so we really have to just find out who corresponds with who. One thing to look at is you might notice that we have what appears to be almost a right angle here and almost a right angle there, so those angles are corresponding. So I could say angle A, then it's congruent to angle D. Then I'll just do all the other correspondences. This angle with that angle. And then finally, that angle with that angle. And then also the corresponding sides. So I could put a single tick there, a single tick there. The single tick is between the proper two angles. Double tick, triple tick, triple tick. Okay, now let's take a look at this problem. Triangle Jill, J-I-L, is congruent to triangle S-W-T. I think that might be Jill Sweetwood, the math department chair. All right, so now it's not so obvious. If these triangles look like they're equilateral or thereabouts, I don't really know who's with who, but what I'm going to do is use the lettering scheme. J with W. J with S, sorry about that. I with W, and then I've got L with T. Okay, so just following the letter scheme. Then as far as the segments are concerned, I could do this. First two letters with first two letters. So J-I with S-W. Last two letters with last two letters. I-L with W-T. And then first and last with first and last. I'll go in a different color. J-L. I'll go 1, 2, 3 with ST, 1, 2, 3. So again, you can just look at the lettering scheme to figure out the congruences. You don't have to obviously see who's matched with who. Okay, so over here, if triangle jar is congruent to triangle lid, let's see if we could list all the congruences. I'll just list them out. I've got no drawing here. So I'll say angle J, first letter, is congruent to angle L, first letter. Angle A, second letter, is congruent to angle I, second letter. Angle R, last letter, is congruent to angle D, last letter. And now for the segments, first two with first two. So segment JA congruent to segment LI. I'll go last two with last two. Segment AR congruent to segment ID. And then I'll go first and last with first and last. So I'll get segment JR is congruent to segment LD. Okay? So you want to get to the point where you could just look at the lettering scheme in the figures. All right, so over here, I've got two congruent triangles. Let's just say that the triangles are congruent. And I want to list all the possible triangle congruence statements. So it's going to be important on the homework, quizzes, tests, etc. I might have one possible solution, but there could be many others. So you want to make sure when you're checking my posted homework solution, maybe you've got the correct solution, but just in a different lettering scheme. Okay, so let's be methodical about this. Why don't we start with triangle ABC. Okay, so A, B, C. So the first two letters, the first letter over here was between a double tick and a triple tick. The first letter over here between a double and a triple would be D. So if I started with A, that would correspond with D. And then I went from A to B, that's along the triple arc. So along the triple arc would be D to F. Okay, and then from B to C is along the single arc, so then FE. Okay, so that's going to be one possibility. And again, it's much easier if you had the angles listed. So if I had angle A congruent to angle D, and then if I had angle B congruent to angle F, and if I had angle C, I'll just do a double with angle E, that would have been much easier. Okay, now let me do all the different permutations or orderings of this. Let's be methodical. I went ABC. Why don't I go ACB? All right, so if I went ACB, it's going to be first, last, middle, first, last, middle, DEF. Okay, so those are the ones that begin with the letter A. Let's try the letter B. I'll go B, A, C. So for my reference one at the beginning, I basically went middle, first, last. So I'll go middle, first, last, F, D, E. Okay, instead of BAC, I could have gone BCA. BCA. Going into my reference, middle, last, first, middle, last, first, FED. Okay, and then I'm going to start with the letter C. So I'll go CAB. Going into my reference, last, first, middle, last, first, middle, EDF. And then finally I'll go CBA. So that's last, middle, first, last, middle, first, EFD. So the whole point of this exercise here was just to let you know when you're checking your homework, please, you could have the correct answer, but just a different ordering. Okay, and then finally, the rule for writing congruent statements is as follows. So what we're going to do is corresponding letters must match in corresponding order, which is exactly what we're talking about here. So there you have it, just the bare bone basics of congruence, and we'll be doing a lot more with this in the rest of chapter 3.